Welcome to the Head Shepherd Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Ferguson, CEO here at NextGen Agri International, where we help livestock managers get the best out of their stock. Before we get started, thank you to our two fantastic sponsors for continuing to sponsor this podcast. MSD Animal Health is perhaps better known as Cooper's Animal Health in Australia and for their Allflex range across the world, with a comprehensive suite of animal health and management products. Honega is a one-stop shop for wool harvesting and animal fibre removal. The Honega team have a deep understanding of livestock agriculture, backed by Swiss engineering and a family business dedicated to manufacturing the best. We are grateful to our sponsors for their support, helping us bring Head Shepherd to you each week. And now it's time to get on with this week's episode. Welcome back to Head Shepherd. Today we are continuing the Angus theme, and we've got Paul Hickman from Taimate Angus in Ward here on the South Island of New Zealand in the Marlborough region. And great chat with Paul, all things Angus breeding. He's back from a recent trip to the US, so we hear a little bit about that. We also hear a bit about his pet bull, Taimate Roy, who's done great things in New Zealand, Australia, and now the US. So, exporting genetics over there, which is something we'll discuss on the show. Before we get into that, this week we've released an article called Managing Hill Country Pasture Quality. Emma Pettigrew, our North Island consultant, has written that article. Another great article to add to the website. Links to that on the hub, so find that either on the NextGen Agri website or the hub or on our socials. Tonight we're continuing the cow theme for a little bit longer, and I'm talking about breeding an efficient herd. So it's a talk I gave at the World Angus Forum Expo in Tamworth on the Rabobank truck. I had a few requests for slides, so I thought I would do a live recording of that. We can then take that recording and add onto YouTube so everyone can access it. But at 8 o'clock New Zealand time tonight, I'll be talking all things efficiency in cattle and really sort of drilling into whole body energy story in cattle. That's on tonight if you're listening to this podcast on the day it's released. Also, quickly, we are in the final stages of our New Zealand Ram Breeders Guide, which is we've released a final version in Australia, a final version in New Zealand, and this will be a terminal and maternal Ram Buyer's Guide in New Zealand. So that's come together beautifully. Really looking forward to getting that out into the hands of all those listeners here in New Zealand. If you are keen to support that booklet, we are just gathering sponsors at the moment. We tend to write these guides and then we look for sponsorship or advertising to help pay for the printing costs so we can get it out into people for free. So if you are listening and you're interested in sponsoring that, whether you're a breeder or whether you're a supplier into the genetics space or whether you just supply into the livestock space and you're keen to support that guide, by all means get in touch with Sophie at nextgenagri.com. Righto, we'll get underway with this week's show. We welcome Paul Hickman from Taimate Angus to the show. Welcome, Paul Hickman, to Head Shepherd.
Cheers, Mark. Very nice to be here. Thank you.
Excellent, mate. Great to have you on, and looking forward to hearing your story and the story of Taimate. And we'll start there. I guess the origins of the farm and the family, and I guess been there a fair while as a family. So be just keen to hear that background story before we get underway with kind of more recent happenings.
Yeah, cheers, Mark. Sorry I'm not on screen, obviously a bit ugly for the camera today. But, the family's been here since 1905. It was a ballot farm. It was a wedding present to my great-grandmother by her brother. And she married a Hickman. So, that's how it sort of came to be. The original farm was 428 acres. And then through my parents getting married in the 70s, they added a bit more when they first got married, and then sort of just kept adding on here and there. And in recent times, we've added on again, and so we're pretty much up to 1,494 hectares now between a couple of three different properties just locally around the district, all only 4 or 5 kilometres apart.
Yeah, excellent. So now several generations into the family business. I guess it'd be interesting it's always hard to answer these sort of questions, but I guess key principles or values that have kind of remained constant throughout that history, and I guess also what maybe in more recent times things that you've changed or your generation has changed.
Yeah, it is sort of tough to answer that sort of thing. But I guess when I think about it, what we've done as family, and what I grew up as with family, was all the generations, and Hickman's been Irish Catholics. There's a lot of us. There were some big families back in the day, and all those extended cousins now that are 5th, 6th, 7th cousins and beyond all still consider Taimate home, no matter where in the world they are. And so it is a very, very big family tree. And I grew up thinking that was normal for all families, but only sort of in adult life realise just how special that is, and just keeping that constantly at the forefront of your mind that, we don't own the land, we're only guardians of it for our generation, and we make the most of it while we can here. And it's not just about us, it's the extended and everybody who feels that this is their spiritual home. As far as significant changes in my time, I think that the most significant one for the land has been removal of capital stock sheep, which was for mine. It was something I identified early when I first came home. I came home as a 18-year-old, and there was a lot of very, very bad drought years in, from the late 90s through the early 2000s. It was pretty much a 10-year drought, and just looking at the landscape as to what sheep do to a dry environment, particularly hills, and to changing that up into cattle. And I guess I just sort of fell in love with cattle. A little bit more about the history. My dad had developed 4 sheep studs, and sheep were obviously the main source of income for, obviously all New Zealand, sheep and beef farms. And but I, for whatever reason, fell in love with the cattle. I think probably just out of looking at what I could see around the district and areas, what sheep were doing to dry landscapes. And so that's probably the most significant change. And we just sort of run with it. So now we just trade sheep.
Yeah, excellent, which is quite different to the region. And I mean, you mentioned the dry region there in Marlborough. It obviously presents some unique challenges, and it's compared to parts of New Zealand. It's low rainfall, it's high wind. It's a pretty punishing summer in most years. I guess obviously you've taken the bit between the teeth in terms of breeding cattle. I guess as you sort of started to develop the Angus stud, how does that environment that you're sort of working with there shape the kind of type of Angus that you want to focus on developing back then and continued?
Yeah, cheers, Mark. I mean, it's an ever-evolving thing. I think if you're only ever trying to do one thing, I think you go backwards. So for me personally, I think you have to be open to always evolving, to getting better. And you are, I guess, pretty much by definition a result of your environment, and that's how I see the cattle. They are, we've had the stud for 70 years now, and so they are a product of their environment. Yep, the environment, we could take the negative approach and say, look, it's bloody average for a lot of the time. But, when we look at our winters and that compared to most other parts, particularly the South Island, just how good it is. So, we've got to take the positive out of a lot of it too. But, we are extremely different, I think, in the stud game here for what we do compared to most studs. I think that's probably our big point of difference, is that trying to present stud animals in this environment is exceptionally challenging. But because of it, I do personally believe, or strongly believe rather, that it is what has made us, made our brand, because of how we have to run things here. We don't have the choice. We don't have water. We don't have irrigation to grow grass. And unlike most, and it just forms, what you present, what your stock are. And so you evolve with the times, and as things improve and as things change, and no doubt as you look at it yourself and what have you. I don't know. I'm starting to blabber now. Sorry, Ferg. I lost my train of thought.
That's all right.
You know where I was going.
Yeah. I guess we can measure all the traits in the world, but at the end of the day, there's like that cow herd out there having to produce, in a lot of sort of South Island context. They're on the hill. They're kind of they're not eating white clover and ryegrass. Well, that probably blow them anyway. But they're not out there. Yeah, they are doing it tough, and I think that does shape the animals obviously over time. And I think we can kind of try and describe that with our breeding values and stuff. But often there is some bit of variation left there just for straight selection in that environment.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Like, the environment does play a big part in things, obviously, as we all know. And it's just identifying what you can do in your environment, I think, is the key to it, and how to manage that appropriately and for the best results. However you measure results, whether it be animal performance or environment or whatever. But it's just measuring all those results. Yeah.
I guess we do talk results. I mean, one of the ways to measure results is sort of bull sale prices, and I in a stud sense, that's a useful measure of results, and you have achieved some pretty remarkable milestones over the last few years. Some pretty big bull sales, and obviously we'll talk about young Roy in a minute. But yeah, I guess if you could sort of summarise your breeding philosophy today, what sort of traits you're prioritising? What do you think what's the balance of traits that you think is leading to your success?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I certainly don't select single trait select as such, and without going down the rabbit hole of hooking in about EBVs versus phenotype and that, which I do want to talk a bit about. But for me, I like to breed what I like to breed. I think, I do believe you got to like the animal you're breeding. As far as traits go, again, we are, I think, determined a lot by our environment, but you've got to do what is productive. And while it sounds a very generic answer, it is very much the holistic approach of trying to have a bit of everything. Certainly not chasing single traits, but having enough of something to make it worthwhile. Like, in my mind, you don't have to chase perfection. And whether you're talking phenotype or numbers, you need to trace, or what I certainly believe anyway, is that you chase what performs for you. And as I say, and if you want to do what makes you happy and you enjoy looking at, it makes life a lot easier. And obviously, being a stud, we have to be mindful of what clients want. It's pretty simple, but if you're not breeding what the clients want, you're not going to be in business. So it's kind of simple, isn't it?
But yeah, it tends to sort you out pretty quick if you're not breeding what the market wants.
No.
If we go down that rabbit hole a bit, I guess that's an important point. Like perfection kind of isn't possible. Like any on any given trait or any given kind of metric. I mean, I think obviously we would like to breed the perfect bull or the perfect ram, but the reality is that's not going to happen. There's always something you can look at them and improve.
We're all looking for the unicorn.
Yeah, and and when we get there, we will have changed our mind anyway, because there'll be something that we've learned.
Exactly.
So it is important, and I guess maybe just obviously everyone's trying to combine phenotype and data, and some people are much more on the phenotype, some people are much more on the data. But I guess if you look at like a bull calf coming through, when does phenotype part of your selection, and then when's the data? Like, I guess how are you combining those two aspects of a successful breeding program?
I think you got there's a couple of aspects there. That obviously the data is very easy in that it's there, smack bang in front of your face, black and white. The likes of ourselves, we genomic everything at birth, and so all the data and that is very accurate from a very young age. Well, I wouldn't necessarily say highly accurate, but very permanent from a very young age. So we know what the data is straight away. Yeah. Phenotype takes a long time to assess. For my way of thinking, like you make a lot of mistakes by assessing an animal too young, because as we all know, animals change as they grow. For mine, phenotype is you need phenotype before you need numbers, and that's going to roll a few. But and the reason for that is that numbers can be put in one cross, one generation. You can bring in, if you want high data, you can just bring it in, bang, and it's not a hard thing to do. Whereas phenotype is a very, very hard thing to breed into your animals, no matter what species you've got. If you've got extremely bad feet, what have you, it's very, very hard to breed it out. If you've got poor wool, you've got major wool faults, it's very, very hard to breed it out. And on the other hand, it's easier to breed in the numbers, if you get what I'm saying there. So, when we're looking at the whole data and phenotype thing, I'm a big fan of numbers, and they work. We need them in the industry, but they are overdone to my way of thinking in some regard, because it's an easy thing to teach, it's an easy thing to show, it's an easy thing to sell, because it's black and white, it's on paper. Whereas phenotype and structure and how an animal walks and what have you is very, very hard to teach in a classroom, very, very hard to express often, and it is very, very hard to breed in to an animal. And so that's where you need to start with structural strength first, and then improve data. And that to me is how you get a better animal.
Yeah, I think it's the slowly does it sort of challenge, and
Absolutely.
that's everyone can, as you say, you can go out and buy the best data, but if it's often there's going to be a few things wrong with that animal. Like there'll be holes in that data, I suppose, that there's not the perfect data animal, as you've already pointed out, because they've always got. It might have great 6 or 7 traits, but it might be hopeless for a couple, which is often how it plays out. I guess increasingly we've got access to kind of the combination of phenotype and data when we start getting structural traits and breeding values on them, and I think that that is going to be really powerful for our industry to sort of, because we know that, as you said, we know that genomics and data works, and obviously it's always getting better as analytics improves. But I think the more we can kind of more phenotype is described properly with data, the kind of better we can go, because we can probably speed that up a bit as well.
Absolutely. The more studs the world over we can have submitting data, and that is what, I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but it's what scares me a little bit about genomics, is that a lot of studs are no longer submitting actual data. But we need more and more studs the world over to be submitting data. But again, on top of that, we need factual data, because a lot of the data that's submitted, especially around structure, is allowed to be submitted by self-assessment in certain breed associations the world over. We need that data, particularly around structure, to be submitted by independents.
I think that's. We kind of. We won't go too far down the rabbit hole, but I agree that we need to be really, really careful with these sort of things, because if people start, particularly if you're buying semen from afar and you're relying heavily on that breeding value, and you know the kind of damage you can do if it's wrong. So anyway, we'll move on. Let's talk about Roy. You obviously, I imagine, relatively proud of that fella, and what makes him so special, and I guess pretty amazing to export semen back to the US market, considering we've spent a lot of time bringing it this way. I guess just talk us through that bull and his story.
Yeah, cheers, Mark. It has been very special, very humbling for us with how it's all played out with Roy. Yeah, he was actually a bull. When I do my breeding, I often plan multiple generations, and I got very lucky with him in that the 3 generations before him were all first calving, like out of a heifer type thing, and they were all very good. And so he came along a bit quicker than what I'd sort of, I guess, had ever hoped. He just ticks so many boxes, right bull for the right time, which, he's phenotypically very, very good. Data, very, very good. He's just only got the one hole, and that's his IMF, which right now, it's probably the one hole you don't want, the way the markets are. But he's so good everywhere else, and he's got the pedigree behind him. It's he's just a very, very all-round bull. To line up pedigree, performance, phenotype, just the whole 9 yards. What it's like. It doesn't happen very often. So and just a little bit of that predictability as well. He's a result of an embryo program, a flush, and one of his flush brothers topped the sale that year as well. And obviously out of an extremely strong cow. She is the best cow we've ever bred. High performance. She sold half a dozen sons into registered programs, and but then when the international interest came, obviously Australia first with the those leading studs, your Millamaras and Millwillers and Coonambles and what have you. For those guys to come knocking, that was very humbling. But then for the US to pick them up, and again a program with such distinction as Musgraves, one of the most well known in the States. You'd never dream of it. In reality, you don't ever expect something like that, do you? So
no, it's awesome,
extremely humbling. And they'll, I think I do genuinely think he'll go good for them. It's right ball for them. They have been searching for outcross genetics, even though America's huge. In the Angus world, the genetic pool is getting smaller. And so for them to find a bull that ticked all the boxes they wanted and with a completely diverse pedigree, one they didn't know anything about at all. He genomicked reasonably well in the American system without being, he's certainly not super high, but not train wreck low or anything. So just very, very special for us to, and what I think, sorry if I keep rambling on a bit, but what I think it'll do for the New Zealand industry. I do, I really expect this to be a bit of an opener for the US market into the New Zealand industry, because talking to a lot of them up there, they've never even thought to look at New Zealand before. And so I do think it'll benefit the New Zealand Angus industry as a whole very, very much so going forward.
Yeah, no, awesome to have, I guess, sell him around the world. How many have you got a handle on how many progeny he's got these days? Or?
I think there might be, there's a tick over 1,000 in New Zealand, give or take, and then several hundred in Australia. But the Australian stuff's still only sort of coming on board because those guys who picked them up, they had a 2-year exclusivity originally, and then so the semen only went on the open market in the last 12 months, I think it's been.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So
there should be quite a bit more to come, and then obviously the States, there hasn't even been anything born over there yet.
Yeah.
So it's early doors. He's only a rising 5-year-old yet. So it feels like he's been around a while for me. But he's still pretty young.
Yeah, and it's great to hear that story about the cow. And I mean, how many times do we hear that great bulls come from great cow lines, and obviously that's the heart of any stud, is that the depth of cows there, and obviously she's doing the job.
Yeah, very much so, very much so. Just trying to get more embryos out of her before she's ready, before something bad happens to her.
Yeah. On the back of Mother's Day as we're doing this interview, so and we've all very even getting on this show, we had to get a bit of tech support from your wife. So it's we know how important the dams are.
Absolutely.
You're recently back from a whirlwind trip, as you quickly mentioned. You've been around the US market for a look. What are your, I guess, couple of key takeaways from that trip?
Don't trust the media. We'd spent close to a month in America and Canada, and Nadine and I. And as far as cattle breeding goes, was some really, really good takeaways. It had been 5 years since I'd been up there. I was up there just before COVID, having a good look around cattle, or in the States it was last time. There, to mind that they've changed the cattle beast a fair bit in the Angus industry in that time, brought them down a frame score maybe a bit more, and really widened them up, thickened them up. To me, the vast majority of cattle I saw, you would virtually describe as New Zealand type. They're very, very good, strong cattle. The breeding data, EPDs, they've got exceptionally good data in their system. Across the board, they have performance data that's way superior to anything we've got. Well, not anything, but way superior as a majority to what we've got down here.
In terms of depth of data, or in terms of
in terms of actual performance. Sorry,
right. Yeah.
When you take comparisons, so the likes of Roy having the Australasian data and then having the American data, and you can look up the odd other bull here and there, and just seeing where they compare in the data systems. But then it's a horses for courses thing too. There's no such thing as a hill. Everything's flat ground. And a lot of them run at massively high elevation, higher than any other cattle in New Zealand by a long way, but it's flat. And so the feed is available. And the systems, I don't think people will really appreciate the difference in systems until you actually see it with your own eyes. And that's, for me, that's the takeaway. And that, yes, we can all use each other's genetics and what have you, but the key is what you are trying to do with those genetics. And this sort of, to me, comes back to a little bit about the phenotype versus data argument, is that we all know full well how well the data performs when an animal's fed. And in those situations, like the North Americans can chase a lot of high performance data because they've got the feed available to put into those cattle. Whereas in the New Zealand system, we don't. And, like a Ferrari that needs high octane fuel, high performance cattle to express that, and will need high performance feed. And so from a maternal point of view, that's why, like, for us on this trip, we weren't going looking at bulls, we were going looking at cows. We were going to look at herds to see what could possibly we thought could, suit a New Zealand system. And it's not even about finding the individual; it was about identifying herds. And so that was a sort of a big focus of our trip, was doing that. Yeah, there's shit I could talk all day, to be perfectly honest, about the differences. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Like the people, the countries, just outstanding. You wouldn't find better people. And I say that the cattle, there's a lot of wonderfully good cattle, and there's so much diversity over there. But they have their issues too, and they know it. And that was one of the reasons Musgraves are out looking at, at the likes of a Roy, because North America does have issues when it comes to structure, feet. Something I saw that I was quite surprised about was a lot of extreme high tail sets. Oh, yeah. And I know a lot of people say, it's just a visual thing, but when you start seeing a lot of animals with pretty much pelvises or hips rotated forward, and that's pushing the tail set up, there are structural issues. They might survive okay on flats, but they wouldn't get up a hill, so.
Is that being, I have no idea, but is that being driven a bit by sort of steer shows and that sort of stuff where
I think that's just been driven in the pursuit of data.
Yeah, right.
There's just been a lot of stuff ignored.
Yeah.
That, and as I say, if you can get away with it in your own environment, then why not?
Yeah.
That's just how it is. Again, it's a horses for courses type situation.
Yeah. We'll move on. I guess for listeners out there who might be young Angus breeders, and one thing I really do appreciate about the cattle industry is the support of young breeders, which is fantastic. Had the opportunity to get over the World Angus Forum and get amongst some of the youth program there, and it's awesome to see how well supported the youth are. But I guess what lessons have you learned over your sort of breeding career that about building consistency and predictability that you'd sort of think that a young breeder should hear?
Yeah, look, if I was to give advice to anyone today, it would be don't go into it for business reasons, because you've got to have passion. You've got to have passion, and then that will drive your business. Start off with an extremely strong animal and make small changes from there consistently. Don't chase the unicorns. I think if I was to start a stud today, the best piece of advice I think I could ever hear or be given would be to go out and identify the programs the world over that you like, that you wish to be aligned with, and flush the cows out of those programs that you like. That would be the way to start a breeding program. Pick out the odd, extremely high performance animal, and I mean performance in every sense of the word, phenotype and genotype, and start with embryos. To me, that would be the way. If you can't do that, you've already started, just small incremental steps.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And try and find someone that you can trust 100% to give you advice.
Yeah. Good points. I think we've probably covered this, but the innovations that you're embracing at Taimate, you've sort of talked about ET, you talked about genomics. Is there sort of anything else that you've sort of added in recent years? I mean, they're probably the biggies.
Yeah, they're the biggies. It was certainly, we make sure we do everything we possibly can as far as recording goes. There's a lot of outfits out there that don't carcass scan heifers, for example, or cow bulls. I think it's important to do everything. So we go out of our way to measure and record everything, as say genomic, everything. Yeah, the embryo stuff I think is awesome. Look, as you know, it's not easy. It's not cheap.
Yeah.
It's not quick, but it's extremely valuable. As I say, we wouldn't have Roy without it. Yeah, but it isn't the be all and end all. We all have cock ups and mistakes, and you use the wrong bull and you spend a shitload of money and you send them all the works.
It's good to keep you grounded.
That's just it. Just it. And like everything, it seems to be when you first do it, you get great results. You think, God, this is easy, and then a few years later, you get burnt. And I know, like this year ourselves, we should have had 70 to 80 embryo calves weaned. And for whatever reason, it was just a disaster with the program, and I think we ended up winning 12. We just had a real cock up amongst. Nobody knows really what happened, but that's the game.
12 for this. 12 for the same price as 70 is always handy.
Yeah. Oh, it's real good. Yeah, it's real good. Yeah, and then when you see them in the weaning pen, you think, I don't really like that one anyway. Yeah. One does something, or that's farming, isn't it? That's the business. Yeah. So
indeed, and I think just going back on a point you made earlier that we've got people sort of shying away from measurement and just using genomics, which I 100% agree with you is probably the biggest risk we've faced, and it's kind of the unintended consequence of amazing technology that won't take us where we need to get to. We need people measuring stuff and measuring more, not less. I 100% agree with that.
Absolutely. Well, because genomics will never prove itself wrong.
No, yeah.
The only way you can change the genomic is to input new, fresh, actual performance.
Yeah, we need that reference population always added in, and the more you add of your own cattle, the better your own reference population is.
I'd love to see breed associations introduce a rule that unless you have recorded a trait, you don't get the data for that trait. And obviously some of them you can't record as such.
Yeah, but for the stuff that you can,
But for the stuff you can, whether it be calving, birth weight, growth, all that, because that's actually a simplistic thing to do too.
Yeah.
And for what we are as stud breeders the world over, getting paid for animals these days, you should be putting in the effort.
Yeah. That's my favourite line, I reckon. Like, that's what I say to people all the time. Like, you don't deserve to breed rams or bulls unless you're going to make the effort. Like, there's not
exactly.
There's no. You can't call yourself a genuine stud breeder if you're actually not going to do a proper crack at it.
That's where, to me, it comes back to the passion thing, because if you're really passionate, you want to do that stuff.
Yeah.
That's what I find. I want to do all the measuring and recording I can because I just want to know.
Yeah.
It's just it's really simple.
Yeah, awesome, mate. We might wrap up. So there's a couple of last questions that we ask everybody, and the first one is, who's the best person you've had the opportunity to learn from?
Yeah, that's a bloody tough one. And I think I've got two answers. Well, probably myself, the amount of mistakes I've bloody made. I should have learned enough. But no, look, as I said earlier, I came home when I was 18 and never left. So naturally, you're going to learn a lot off your dad, good and bad. Bit of a generic answer, I know, but he certainly did teach me a hell of a lot. As I say, he had 4 sheep studs, and the cattle stud was just ticking along when he was here. But so I did learn a lot off him in an animal sense, in a farming sense. But this is a bit of a left field one. My very first senior rugby coach, again, when I first came home, I was 19, I must have been by the time I was playing then, and just taught me a heck of a lot about honesty and accountability. And it's just stood me in really good stead for life in general, Yeah, and because the stud game is not about necessarily what your product. It's a lot about you, the person, the breeder, the seller, and being accountable to other people, because we've got other people's businesses in our hands. They're relying on us for their business to make money. So, Terry Renner, my first senior rugby coach, he's actually still managing the bloody local team at the moment.
There you go.
25, 26 years later. Yeah, he was a guy he wouldn't have a clue at all, but he would be one guy who's had a bigger impact on me than anyone would know,
Yeah, awesome. And
definitely.
That's 100% why we asked the question, because those sort of things come out. And I actually tried to answer this myself the other day for the newsletter, and had to. I think I pulled up at about 6. I couldn't narrow it down any more than that. But, it is a tough question to answer, because we all get influenced by it. But it's great to listen to hear those couple of people have had a big influence. The last one we ask is, and you've already said you've made plenty of mistakes, but what's the last thing you changed your mind about?
I changed my shirt when I thought the camera was going to be on. I thought it was a bit ugly.
Good man.
No, I in a holistic sort of meaning, I really don't know. I've never changed my mind about my wife. Still the same one.
Good option.
Look, I'm honestly drawing a bit of a blank there.
Yeah, no worries, mate.
There, Ferg. Yeah, it's something. I try not to change my mind too often. Well, I probably do it more than I realise, and
I think it sounds like you're as we we use wrong bulls, we use right bulls, we do wrong things. But yeah, so no, it's a tough question to answer. So appreciate that. But it's great to hear about those couple of people. But we'll pull it up there, mate. Taimate bull sales coming up. If anyone wants to find out more about you, the website best place to go, or Facebook? Where do
website and Stalkbook, on Facebook, just Taimate Angus at Gmail. TaimateAngus.com is the website, and 16th of June is our sale day this year. Yeah, it's funny. A lot of agents and what have you are talking up that the bull sales are going to be super strong because of calf sales, but I don't think so. Guys have had it tough for 2 or 3 years.
I think calf sales are making up for some deficits in the sheep business. So I think
absolutely they are. It's actually something if you just got them, and I just wanted to mention about. I meant to mention about the US, just the difference in markets and the frustrations that I see from it. Like right now in the US, those guys are getting 2.5 times our equivalent when it comes to a live weight animal.
Yeah.
I was talking to a breeder the other day, Josh at Spring Cove, and he just sold us some weaner calves. They're about 270 kilos, some weaner steers, straight Angus. He got $2,000 US for a 270 kilo weaner steer. In our money, that's pretty much 3,400, and we think we're going really good at 1,400, 1,500. It's something. It needs to be addressed if you ask me, because there's no way that there is that much difference in getting our product over there.
No. Well, 270 kilos is 270 kilos of
well, that's just it. And you can't tell me freight is worth all that much when it's in a box and in a container. Even with Trumpy's 10%.
Anyway. And I was blown away when I travelled last year around the lamb industry. The same deal. Like the prices are just phenomenal.
And who's making the margin? Because someone is.
Anyway, that's another rabbit hole we could spend some time down, mate. So.
You're right there, mate. You're right there. I wouldn't mind sometimes spending a few hours with you, but yarning about it all.
We'll have to do that. We've got a few bull sales ahead of us, so hopefully we can stumble across each other. But I really appreciate your time, mate, and all the best for the sale this year, and hopefully the Marlborough gives you a nice kind winter up there, and we look forward to catching up around the bull sales.
No, I appreciate it, Ferg. Thank you very much.
Cheers, mate. Thanks again to Heineken, who are proud world leaders in the manufacturing and supply of professional sheep shearing and clipping equipment. Thank you to MNSD Animal Health and Norflex Livestock Intelligence. They offer an extensive livestock product portfolio focused on animal health management, all backed up by exceptional service. We thank both of these companies for their ongoing support of the Head Shepherd podcast.